You're listening to the Crack It Cold podcast, where we interview inspiring individuals and ask them what they do and why they do it. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Crack It Cold, where you can find other creative media projects. Welcome everyone to the Crack It Cold podcast. Today I have special guest Daniel Whatley.
Hey.
I know he looks old, but he's actually my brother, not my dad or anyone else. But no, I'm really excited to have Daniel on. One, because he's someone that has inspired me, and then one that is on this podcast is someone who has been an inspiration. So, you know, Daniel, he's my older brother. He's exactly 10 years older than me.
Yep.
So as I've gotten older, you know, we've been able to relate on more topics.
Yeah.
You know, Daniel has a lot of hobbies and interests. He also has a very interesting career. And so I really would love to just talk to you about, you know, what you do, why you do it, what motivates you. So just to get us started, Daniel, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? You went to AU, Anderson University. Now you live in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. So just tell us, you know, how you got from point A to B and what your story's like.
Yeah, heck yeah. So, yeah, like you said, we live in South Carolina. We moved down here, Auburn and I. October 1st will be 7 years. But before that, lived my whole life in Indiana. Loved it. It's a great place to grow up. Had a lot of fun with you and Isaac and Jacob growing up. Went to college in Anderson, Indiana, not far from where I grew up. I was that kid that was always afraid that I wouldn't make it into college. I wasn't stupid, but I didn't have the greatest grades. School was kind of hard for me. And, you know, I applied to AU thinking I probably wasn't going to get in. Like the idea of going to college terrified me. Mm-hmm. So when I did get accepted in, I actually got accepted through, it's called the Alpha program. And it's designed for kids that needed a little bit of extra help with like their study habits. And, the only difference is you would take this one course at the beginning of your freshman year, with a woman named Diana Stankiewicz, and she was really cool. It made me feel kind of dumb, the fact that I got into college through like this weird alpha program.
Yeah.
But it got me into school, and I did much better in college because the topics interested me, right? Wow. Decided to major in Bible and religion. Quickly realized that I did not want to be a pastor, so I added a computer science major, because that's where my skill sets are anyway, right?
Nice.
So I kept the Bible and religion major and just double majored, which was interesting because none of the classes for those majors overlapped. So to get both majors in, I had to squeeze 4 years of college into 4.5. But when I was a student, I was working in the IT department as, you know, just a student worker. It was a campus job. And as I was finishing my senior year, one of the employees there kind of stepped down, and the department said, "Hey, we'd like you to apply for this job."
Nice.
And I was like, yeah, that would be fantastic. So I applied. Of course, they gave me the job, because I had proven myself, you know, as being a good employee, which was kind of great because it meant that being an employee of the university, my schooling would be free from that point on. Yeah. So rather than cramming everything into one semester, I extended it over a whole year and took a couple extra classes that I thought would just be fun to take. I took bass lessons from a well-known classical bass instructor, because I had the time to.
Nice.
And it was free to me. I'm pretty sure that my starting salary was less than what the schooling I got for free was worth. So I like to think I doubled my salary that year. But yeah, graduated college, and I'm not including Auburn in any of this because I'm assuming we'll talk about that separately. But yeah, I got a great start to my career in the IT department at AU. It's a very small group of people, which was kind of great because it gives you a lot of ability to have hands-on projects, make decisions. And so within a year, I was in a spot to where I was doing some pretty cool stuff. Virtualization within IT was becoming pretty hot, pretty popular at the time. And so I got the chance to virtualize several labs in the school, really base level stuff, but I got to make it my own, and I got to get a lot of experience in that field. And I realized that virtualization is 100% the route I wanted to take moving forward. So, the fact that I got that job right out of school at AU, even though it wasn't the greatest paying job, it really got me where I needed to be, for the rest of my career. And so, my wife, Auburn, she, was very interested in moving south to where it's warm. For me, it wasn't so much that I wanted to move to the south as it was I kind of wanted to prove to myself that I could do something else. You know, I loved Indiana. I didn't necessarily want to leave, but I needed to prove to myself that I could do it. And we visited quite a few places down in the south. We visited Columbia. We visited Myrtle Beach because she has an aunt there, and we quickly realized that Myrtle Beach is just a tourist trap that we never want to be a part of. But when we visited Charleston, we walked down by the harbor just like we did last night. And we realized that this is where we wanted to live. We came home and just started applying for jobs. And the idea was, if one of us got a job, then that would be enough and that we would move. And, you know, from there, the other could find a job. I applied to the College of Charleston, just to stay within higher education. That didn't quite pan out. They didn't really have a position that was fit for me, even though they did like me. I got through to, you know, quite a few rounds of interviews, but it just didn't work out in the end, which I'm incredibly thankful for, because that's what led me to start applying for positions within the government. And government contracting in Charleston is very strong. On the East Coast, it's a very big hub because we do have Spay War here. It's now since called NIWIC, but there's a lot of great contracts out of there. I applied for a few and got a call back wanting to hire me. And then within a week, Auburn got flown down for an interview at an accounting firm downtown Charleston. And within 1 week, we both had jobs down here.
Wow.
And we were blessed with pretty great jobs. You know, fortunately, our career fields are usually in demand, and there's not, it's not hard to find work. So we're very blessed. Sorry, that's a very long way of describing how I ended up from college to South Carolina.
That's exactly why, you know, we ask questions. You just got to get to know, you know, who you are and kind of. But one thing I've always like really thought was cool about you is you always have something to kind of get your mind off of work, or kind of something that keeps you, you know, entertained. Or not, I mean, not that your job isn't entertaining for you, but that, you know, you have to have a variety of things that you do in your life to keep things exciting. And, you know, you've always been a bass player. You've recently got into woodworking, and, you know, I obviously, like, you've collected comic books before. You have a lot of really interesting things about you that you do, and I just want to ask you about some of those. And you can share any of that.
Well, if you ask Auburn, she makes fun of me because my hobby is collecting hobbies, apparently. But I think what it really comes down to, anyone that knows me knows that I hate being bored. I hate sitting around doing nothing. I love learning new things. And it's funny to me because obviously I wasn't the best student in school, but once I graduated from school, like it's the classroom setting that
you didn't like.
I love learning new things and being able to do it on my own time and in my own way. And so I've had lots of different hobbies over the years. I think, comic books right at the end of my college career, I got into heavily, mainly because I had the money to afford them. I wasn't that kid that was going down to the comic book store when I was 10 years old to read comics. I didn't start reading comics until I was in college.
Okay.
But I had a friend, Michael, who kind of introduced me to them, and just the physical, tangible media of a piece of paper with art on it was really intriguing to me, because at the time, like Spotify didn't really come around until like I was almost out of college. There weren't streaming music services. There weren't good streaming music services. I was always the kind of person that loved tangible items versus digital. And so comic books to me were such an analog thing. There's nothing digital about it. You can feel the paper in your hands. And it's just good stories. And it would allow you to sit down and read on your couch without a screen on. And especially because what I do for a career is sitting in front of a screen all day, I find myself liking to do physical things when I'm not working. So, you brought up woodworking. When we moved down here to South Carolina, so that was 7 years ago. So probably about 6 years ago is when I really started getting interested in that. Growing up, we'd watch PBS, and there was the New Yankee Workshop and This Old House, and those shows were so much fun.
My favorite part about This Old House was, he'd put some glue on something. He'd be like, all right, we're going to check on this project in the morning. Screen fades out. Well, good morning.
Yeah. Wearing the same clothes. Like you could tell they just faded the camera, brought it back up. But what's funny is, there's so much on YouTube now, with all of these channels of woodworkers, and they're all inspired by those guys, right? It all goes back to those guys. Wow. And so I started watching these YouTube channels, and I was like, man, that what looked fun when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And now I've been blessed with a job that allows me to buy a few tools. So I bought a table saw, and I just fell in love with it. And Auburn makes fun of me because at the time we were living in an apartment, and we had a little shed that was ours for our apartment that was separate.
Yeah.
It was like down the street. And so I would work in there. It was probably not even bigger than the space of this couch. And then we moved into a townhouse that had a back porch with a closet.
Yeah.
And that back porch was where I worked. It was covered in sawdust, but I just had a blast. So I knew that when we moved into a house, we moved in here right in 2019, right before the market went crazy. So again, God's just blessed us with timing.
Yeah.
But I had a garage, and has very high ceilings. It's a little bit bigger than most garages, and the exterior walls were not finished at all. But to me, it was just a blank canvas of, I can make this the shop that I want.
So here we are in Daniel's garage.
Here in my garage.
He's going to show us around. I'm going to ask him questions about what kind of crazy things we can find in here.
Well, starting off, like I was saying before, none of these external walls were drywalled or insulated, so I took it as a chance to learn how to insulate and drywall. The insulation went fine. You can definitely see the seams in my drywalling, but I learned a lot, so that was really cool.
Nice.
Auburn gave me a budget for redoing, or not redoing, but getting this place up to how I wanted to, which included drywall, insulation, paint, wood for the countertops that I built, for cabinets.
Let's check it out. What do you got in here?
Yeah, so the first thing you're going to see is kind of nerdy. We've got a D&D sign that I made. Cut it the letters on the CNC. Used the herringbone pattern. What's funny is this wood is made from an old door frame in the house that caused me a lot more stress than it should have. So I cut it up and made something more fun out of it.
Very nice.
Some artwork that I've collected over the years. But this first cabinet is actually holds my 3D printers. I've got 2 of them. So like I said, I play Dungeons and Dragons a lot, and you can quickly spend a lot of money on miniatures. So I decided to start 3D printing my own.
Wow.
I can't tell you what is currently on the print bed because Auburn is filming and she's a part of the D&D party, and I can't spoil what's coming up.
Shout out Auburn, camera woman.
Yeah, so these are resin 3D printers. They're not SLA. They are SLA printers, which means there's a
oh man.
Yeah, there's a ultraviolet screen at the bottom of each of these vats of liquid resin.
Yeah.
And there's a Z-axis that dips itself down into the resin just slightly above the bottom of the vat, and the light shines through, cures just that layer. It lifts up, puts back down just slightly above where it just did, cures another layer, and it does that, roughly for something like this size, it's about 2,000 times. For something this size, it's about 1,000 times. You take, your print off the printer, clean it with isopropyl alcohol. You don't want to get resin all over your hands. It's not good for you. So you wear a lot of gloves. But I made this shelf or this cabinet to keep everything up off of my work surfaces, but also to keep the dust off the printers.
Yeah.
This being a woodworking garage, dust does not mix well with these things. So I actually designed it to where the top comes off.
Yeah, here, I can hold your mic.
Yeah, hold this for a second. Like this. Which allows me to take the lids off the printers. This is a curing station. It shines UV light when the print is finished. Anyways, that's cool stuff.
Are these now? Did you 3D print these guys? These little guys?
Yeah, actually, I did not 3D print these.
But you're speed painting them.
But I am speed painting these. So these were initially just kind of a gray color. These are for a board game that I play called Deep Madness. There's about 400 monsters in this game.
Holy cow.
And I just started painting this group of 8. But yeah, I don't know if you can see that. That's a finished one. What I do is I airbrush gray primer onto them, and then I airbrush this light purple. These have been washed in like a purple ink, and then eventually I'll highlight them all to where they look like that.
All right, let's see what's over here. What do you got?
Painting's a lot of fun.
You got a lathe over here?
Yeah, so funny story. Isaac bought me this lathe at an auction. It's a small lathe. But
so essentially it spins really fast, right? How does this work?
Yeah, you put wood.
There's a lot of people on here that don't know what's going on.
And it spins.
You gotta explain.
And you hold a blade up to it, and you can turn things into a perfect circle.
Very nice.
You can.
It's like on a table leg or something.
Like a table leg, or I tend to spin or turn smaller items like pins.
Okay.
I can drill holes in the center of things. Perfectly, and make pins for gifts. Like last Christmas, I probably made like 30 pins for people.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what's over here? Did you draw this or you buy these?
No. So a lot of this is prints or commissions. So this was by, I believe her name was Joelle Jones. She drew this Archangel for me at Indiana Comic-Con.
Nice.
This Be Safe, Have Fun, Stay Passionate, Make Something. It's by one of my favorite YouTubers.
Sweet.
Just kind of a fun reminder. These are just, I didn't want the garage to be boring. When I come out here, I want to be inspired. And so I figured surrounding myself with stuff that inspires me would be cool.
Heck yeah. Did you make this? Did you make all these workbenches?
Yeah, most everything in here was made by me.
Nice.
So this workbench was one of the first things I made when we moved in.
It's nice.
It's got plenty of drawer space underneath. Having a solid workbench that just does not move is really important to be able to clamp things to. Just beat up. It's thick. Nothing's going to happen with it.
What exactly is this DeWalt thing over here?
Oh, that's a planer. So it helps you make boards flat. So for example, all this wood behind you here, this used to be, all these stacks used to be my friend Brian's kids' play set in their backyard.
Oh, wow.
And it was all rough sawn, warped over time. And so what you can do is you can make perfectly square boards between a table saw, the planer, and a jointer, which I have down here. Allows you to mill up your own lumber. What I love doing is taking things that already exist or were made out of wood, tearing them down, and making new stuff out of them. A, because lumber costs a ton of money nowadays. And B, it's just kind of fun to repurpose. So you'll see here, there's a very large stack of tables. Our church, Seacoast Somerville, was getting rid of those tables from the kids' rooms because they're just massively heavy. But I saw them and I was like, that's a lot of wood.
That's a lot of wood.
I could make something out of that.
It's a lot of wood.
They brought it over. I mean, granted, it's just pine. Nothing special about it, but it's free wood. So I've got the space.
We got to get over here. I see some cool stuff over here.
Got clamp storage. Made a really very quick and dirty clamp storage. But this is my most favorite machine in the entire shop. This is what's called a CNC router. So you have a router blade that spins in space, and you can control the X, Y, and Z axis. It's pretty simple as far as what it does, but programming it to be able to cut things is a lot of fun for me. I did not go to school for engineering, but I feel like I missed my calling in engineering.
Well, this is where your two worlds collide here. You got
absolutely,
the computer design, and mixed with the hobby and the on hands.
So I built this whole cart for the machine with lumber storage underneath. I've got plenty of stock that I can cut into just about any part that I want or any design that I want. I've made I make these dice boxes that are designed for Dungeons and Dragons. I've made the tops of boxes like Jacob. I put the University of Indianapolis logo on top of a commemorative box for him. I actually made these small challenge coins for Jacob when he was in DC that he gave one to the vice president, to Mike Pence.
Nice.
And Mike Pence in turn gave me his vice president challenge coin, which not a lot of people have, which is really cool. I cut those right here in my garage in South Carolina, and it sat in a display case in Washington, D.C. in the White House. Or it may perhaps not the White House, but in the vice president's office. Jacob would know exactly where it was. But storage for router bits in here. And I don't know if you want to film this there, Aubrey. But,
check it out.
I'm big on organization. I'm OCD. It's a big problem. But at least I stay organized.
Check out what we got. We got the kayaks hanging up on the ceiling here. We've got a pulley system going on.
Yeah, so cheap Amazon stuff, with the high ceilings in the garage, I figured the best way to store things is to, keep them on the roof because the garage door closes over the top of it.
And so we kind of missed, is this like a sawdust vacuum over here?
Yeah, this is called dust storage or dust collection, right? So this big hose I can connect to just about any machine in here. I can connect it to my planer, my jointer, my table saw, my chop saw. I can put it up behind the lathe, and it sucks all the dust into this bag. That makes it really easy to remove because if you don't have that thing on, working in a garage especially, this is just a normal house garage, dust gets everywhere. And so being able to control the dust is really important. If you see up here next to the kayaks, we have air filtration because the dust collector doesn't get all of it. Very fine particles end up in the air. And this unit will recycle all of the air in this garage completely in, I believe, 15 minutes.
Wow.
So if that thing is on, every bit of air in this space has moved through it and been filtered out every 15 minutes.
That's awesome.
I usually set it on a timer. And put a TV out here. I spend a lot of time out here. Auburn allowed me to make this garage my own. One day I'm going to have to find space to put kids' toys, but we'll deal with that when we get there. But
That's awesome.
We'll finish this up in the morning. Well, good morning. So, Willie, this podcast is called Crack It Cold.
Yes.
Are we going to crack anything cold?
I sure hope so.
Cool. I brought these white zombies.
Yep.
It's a white zombie white ale. It's brewed in North Carolina. It's pretty basic, but it's got a little bit of spice to it, with just like a little bit of citrus flavors, a little bit of orange and lemon, I believe. But there's nothing fancy. I don't care for too many like over the top micro brews that were, overdone, but
Oh yeah. No, this is great. This is great. We had a couple of these out on the kayak yesterday.
Yep. Yeah, speaking of other hobbies, kayaking has been one just in recent years. So when COVID hit, obviously, isolation became big, and you just had to find ways to keep yourself occupied away from people. And we live very close to the Ashley River. Mm-hmm. And there's some great easy access there. And I knew that kayaking is something that I've kayaked before in the past, but I've never owned kayaks. I know Isaac owned a kayak out there at Eagle Creek, and he was going a lot, and I kept thinking, man, that would be fun. So I got on Craigslist, and for like $150, I found, an old kayak that came with the paddle and an old life jacket. And I was like, I'm not going to put too much money into this until I know that I like it.
Yeah.
And I got out on the water and put in, and kind of fell in love. Auburn was interested, so we went and bought her a kayak and a paddle and a life jacket. And we go out very often. I'd say probably once a month, give or take a little bit. And it's just so quiet and peaceful out there.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great way to get away from noise, be out on the water, see some alligators. But it's very peaceful. And it doesn't, I call it a hobby, but it doesn't require a lot of work or a lot of effort. You drop your kayak down, throw it on the roof of the car, and drive it over and throw it in the water. It's pretty simple.
Well, and you have, as we saw earlier, you have that contraption up in the garage with those kayaks.
Mm-hmm.
And, we got them down. But the two of us took us, how long would you say?
A minute and a half, maybe.
Just get them down, put them up on the car.
Yep.
We were out of there. So that was super cool. But yeah, another hobby that, like you said, is away from the screen, outdoors. Yep. I think that it was interesting, just me and you going out there together. On the way back, I feel like we just talked the whole time.
Stopped
it was
and floated.
Yeah,
Didn't even have to paddle.
We took our time. With the low tide coming in, you timed it up to where the water was coming up, and then it started going down by the time we turned around. So
yep. Yeah, so the Ashley River is tidal. It's connected to the ocean, so there's websites where you can just look at when high tide is. And if I figured out that if you put in the river at about 30 to 45 minutes before high tide, you don't really have to fight the water much. You can go up, and then by the time you're coming back, the water has switched directions. Yeah. It's really interesting. Versus, the White River back in Indiana was great, very pretty, but it was very fast moving relative to the Ashley River.
Yeah.
And, you you could go one way easily, but trying to paddle back upstream would not be fun, especially if you're going 6 miles like we did. But
so how long you are definitely interested in music too. Music is something a big passion of yours. What's the first band you can remember listening to? And how old were you?
Yeah, well, so I remember me and Renee would always listen to the Prince of Egypt soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
It just seems so silly. But as far as listening to real, quote unquote, bands, music that's not like a soundtrack or something that Dad used to listen to when we were kids, Reliant K has definitely got to be one of the first. I was in probably late elementary school, early middle school. Well, I honestly don't remember when, but that introduced me to what punk rock is, and I wasn't listening to Blink 182. I was definitely that Christian kid, right?
Okay.
But that was kind of the gateway for me into what I would consider to be, heavier music.
Okay.
I mean, Reliant K is by no means heavy, but I was interested in the guitars and all that.
So you started, what was the first instrument you played then?
Guitar. Actually. So I remember I would mow Grandpa Whatley's lawn once a week for the summer, and he paid me $20 every time.
Which was a lot back then.
It was just a lot for a kid.
Inflation has changed.
Yeah. Gosh. I remember this one time, though, I couldn't mow the lawn, and Isaac mowed the lawn instead of me, and Grandpa paid him $5.
No.
And I remember Isaac being so upset about it, and I just I don't know what to tell you, man. And what's funny is Grandpa and Grandma would hide their money from each other. They came from that time period of the Depression and all that. So Grandpa would wait until Grandma went in the other room when I was done mowing. He's like, all right. And he would tell me a different location in the house to go find money. He'd say hey, in the black leather coat in the front closet in the back, in the left pocket on the inside, there's money. Grab a 20 out of there. Or he'd say, hey, there's a jar in my black luggage case in the closet in my bedroom. Go in there and get the money. And it cracks me up every time.
Grandpa Whatley, man, what a G.
Yeah.
He was a good man.
Oh man, he'd come over every single Wednesday. We were homeschooled, and so he'd come over Wednesday at lunch, and we would play. Basketball. We'd play pig or horse or something, and he'd always show me. He'd hey, this is a layup, and he wouldn't even move. He just hold the ball in one hand and throw it over his head. And so for the longest time, I thought a layup was just shooting from the side, because that's what Grandpa taught me.
That's awesome.
No, going back to music, I saved up my money from that summer of mowing for Grandpa, or one of my summers, and I went to Guitar Center in Castleton, and I found it's actually quite incredible. This old left-handed Washburn guitar for $100, and I had $120 that I had saved, and I was so proud of myself for saving that much money up. And the fact that there was even a left-handed instrument in that store was amazing. The fact that it was used, I mean, it was not in great condition. I had zero clue how to play guitar.
Did you teach yourself then, or how did that work?
Well, so what's funny is I learned what open tuning was. So in open tuning, you can strum all the chords straight down, and it plays an open chord. And then, if you literally take one finger on one fret, and it'll play different chords. And so that as funny as it is, that got me interested in playing guitar, because I saw that you could play actual music with it, even if you were just using one finger. And I quickly realized that's not the proper way to do it. Yeah. But it allowed me to start playing chords Before that, I had been taking piano lessons, and so I did have a decent understanding of very basic music theory. I knew scales, I knew chords, but stringed instruments were very new to me. So my friend Brandon got a drum kit, and we started playing music together in his little playroom. It was like the room that we used to play literally with toys and Legos in, but we graduated into music.
Yeah, there you go.
And, oh my gosh, it was terrible. I'm sure anyone within a mile of that room was just plugging their ears. It was so bad because we were learning right as we were going, and I had learned to play enough standard chords to play just about any song, just in basic keys, right? And I had learned power chords and bar chords, and which are ways that you can play the instrument in a more kind of in a basic way, but enough to get you by. But then Ben Adamson got a guitar, and he wanted to play with us, and we realized that, we need a bass player. And I was like, okay, I can get a bass. Went to Guitar Center, bought. Again, I'm pretty sure the bass cost me less than $100, which can tell you how good the quality of that instrument was. Yeah. But I started playing the bass, and I fell in love with it right away. I think that anybody that plays bass and chooses to play bass over anything else, I don't know. I kind of like that. It's not you play bass differently than if you were a guitar player who plays guitar and then happens to play bass on the side. I think it kind of shapes the way
because
you think about.
It's your dominant, and that's your most dominant. That's what you want to play always.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So me and Ben and Brandon and those guys, we were real into metal at the time. Just anything metal, anything heavy, which is a lot of just chugging on the open D string, drop D and all that. And again, as much as we were completely awful and completely terrible, we had fun. And I think that's what's most important when you're starting to play music. Obviously you need to learn to play your instrument. That's very important. But if you're not having fun with it, then what's the point?
Yeah.
You're not going to want to sit down and play more. So when I started taking actual lessons on bass, I was taught that, hey, we're going to sit down, we're going to learn major and minor scales, we're going to learn pentatonic scales, we're going to learn music theory, but we're also going to learn fun songs that you want to learn. So I would bring a song that I wanted to learn how to play, usually some silly metal song.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I still love metal. I'm not insinuating that metal is silly at all. It's just that seems to be, when I was growing up, that is what every garage band was playing. But yeah, I quickly started to learn how to actually truly understand music better. And around the time I was about to graduate high school, I started playing in a band with Matt Runda and Sam Tompkins called Respondents. And we had a lot of fun. We had the opportunity to open for a lot of really big acts. Emery is one of my all-time favorite bands. I still, to this day, go to concerts. I've been to one of their concerts this year. Before COVID, me and my friends Josh and Jeannie went to 3 Emery concerts, literally back to back to back.
Yeah.
They were touring the Southeast. They were in Savannah, Charleston, and Columbia, I believe. And we went to every single one. Because we had played some shows with Emery, my band did, and I got to meet them and talk to them a little bit. And when I moved down here, come to find out, Josh and Jeannie are very close friends with Toby. Okay. I was like, wow, it's kind of a small world. And so now whenever we go to shows, Toby gets us free tickets.
That's awesome.
And, we got to open for Disciple and Day of Fire, My Epic, just a lot of these cool bands that I had been listening to, we got to play with, and that was really, really fun. We were blessed to be able to record an album together. The recording quality is what it is, but it's on a actual disc with a, the paper insert and shrink wrapped.
I still remember coming to the gear and watching you guys. I don't remember how old I was, probably 10. I don't know. I mean, how old were you?
I would have been, between 19 and probably 23.
Yeah, so I was like between the age of 9 and 13.
Yeah.
Probably closer to 9 because I don't remember. Yeah, I mean, I was young.
Yeah.
And I remember getting you a T-shirt and having you guys all sign the back of it.
Do you still have that?
I was just, I just loved. I was probably the youngest kid there.
Yeah.
And this little, the gear, like this concert video.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
That was a really fun time in my life. I mean, we would travel up to Michigan for shows, to Illinois, Ohio, Virginia. We played around, and it was a really fun way to spend my college years, being part of
that's so
what
cool.
I would consider a legit enough band.
I mean,
we didn't have plans of getting signed or going big or anything, but we had a lot of fun. Ate at Steak and Shake late a lot of nights because that's the only place open after a show. And man,
oh yeah, well that's great. I think like I mentioned too, it's interesting to hear all that because. For me, I was so young during that time in your life. And so we didn't really talk a lot about that. Like I said, we just, the age difference. But now, like, we're starting to understand that. And I can share a lot of what I'm going through right now. And one thing for me that's been really neat is that being the youngest of 5 kids, you mentioned earlier that going to college for you was kind of scary. Like you didn't even know if you could get in. That was a genuine fear of yours. Well, I was the youngest and all 4 of my older siblings all went to college.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, I wasn't scared. I never felt like I had to be afraid because you guys kind of set an example for me and did things, and whether you did things well or you did things the wrong way. Everyone you kind of learn from it, and I was able to witness that. And so I think for me, a big blessing is just kind of like looking up to all my siblings and following in your guys' footsteps. It makes life a lot easier.
You're lucky enough to get four different examples, right?
Yeah, I know.
And we all did certain things right, and we all did certain things wrong.
Yeah.
I got to watch the way that Renee did things, and she did a lot of things in a lot of really cool ways. Some of them worked great for her that didn't work for me in some ways, and not that anyone does anything right or wrong, but like you said, you can look at those examples and then kind of formulate your own path, right?
Yeah.
And seeing Renee go to college was really inspiring because neither of our parents went to college, and it's something that at the time it's a little bit different today, but at the time it was like you go to college after high school. There wasn't a lot of people not going to high school or to college, and if you didn't, there was kind of a stigma there,
Yeah. Which I think that definitely still exists today. And at this point, it's almost like, it's almost as if the standard of college has diminished in value, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Because it's like so many people go now. It's like college has probably gotten easier. I mean, with the way the technology is and everything, depending on what your major is, I think some majors definitely require a lot of studying and learning and very important things, but there's other careers that really don't seem that necessary for me to go to college.
Well, it's a very expensive 2 to 4 year stepping stone to figure out what it is you want to do. I think if anything, your first a lot of people, their first 2 years in college is figuring out what it is they want to even do, whereas they could have had some time in between, to maybe think about that, but I think you're so right. Certain career fields, like I would even venture to say that my career field is something that could be done and learned without college.
Yeah.
Now, college was good for me. I learned a lot at college, and I got the piece of paper that says, whatever, but that says I'm qualified somehow. But I think you're right. Like some bits of college are a bit fluffy, and unnecessary. And I'm really liking this trend that we're seeing of college not being as important or not as much importance placed on it as it was back with when Auburn and I were in. And you look, I started college in 2008. Yes, in 2008, like right after all of the housing market crash, or like in the middle of all of that.
Yeah.
And so when we started college, the economy was kind of going through a very interesting change, and a lot of small Christian colleges like AU, where we went, were dealing with a lot of interesting bits of things with like the numbers of kids that were going or the number of kids that were dropping out, and all of that. And, I don't want to get too political on your podcast here. But there's all the conversations today about, loan forgiveness and all of that. I have my own opinions that I don't want to say here. But college, I'm curious to see what it'll look like in, 4 or 5 years from now after you've graduated.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I think, and it's like I said, it's like a standard. Like a lot of people feel like they have to go and, go to school longer now just to stand out.
Yeah.
And for me in my career field, it's really all about the experience that you have in the industry. So I've focused a lot of my time and effort on internships or volunteer experiences rather than, the classwork itself. Yeah. Like I try to get good grades, but it's always kind of been something that I put on the back burner. Like,
yeah.
And I think that, that's important because now when I go to apply for a job, like I have real experience that, excuse me.
No, you're good.
Kind of proves, I'll cut that out. I have real experience that kind of proves, that I've been out there and I've been doing things.
Yeah. I look at Jacob's career field though, and like I thank God that Jacob went to college. Like, literally working in the medical field where you're in some cases physically manipulating someone's organs to keep them alive. Right. I'm pretty sure that is a very good reason why you should go to school.
Medical, anything science related, engineering, like those things all require it is hard work and it requires a lot of learning. And I don't want to say college isn't important for those, but there's a lot of areas where I think that you've said this before, like an apprenticeship almost might be a better option for someone who wants to study business or someone who wants to study.
And it doesn't have to be those, like everyone when they think of apprenticeship they think of like masonry or woodworking. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about, every company's looking for, I don't even think it's that they're looking for cheap labor. I think it's that they're looking for people that they know are going to stay and are going to be committed. Yeah. And I think that you can build that kind of commitment with apprenticeships. But that's a whole other conversation.
It's a tough, it's a tough age coming out of high school. I mean, and I'm in it right now. I mean, I'm going into my last year of college here, and it's scary. There's a lot coming at me with whether it's financial, where I want to be, who
Yeah, you mean like physically
where
in the country?
Where I want to live, where I want to work, what kind of job I want to apply for.
Yeah.
Do I want to stay in school longer? Like those are all things that I have to think about, and I think get through it, but it's tough.
Well, and I think you find a lot of times today that people aren't sticking with the same career or career field for very long. I know for me, I can't talk too much about, my job with the government, but I enjoy it. It fortunately, and it pays well, and I'm good at it. But it also comes with a level of stress that I don't want for my whole life. I could see myself once, kids are, grown and out of the house, or even if they're, when they're in high school, I would love to be able to take a job that is a little bit less demanding of my mind and my time. And I think you just see less people staying at jobs for long periods of time. Whereas I remember growing up, like my grandpa Whatley, retired from GM, and Grandpa Shank retired from the railroad, and they worked there their entire lives. And I'm sure, it's tough work, but I'm sure they found fulfillment in that. Mm-hmm. But today's world is just so different. Especially after COVID, seeing that we can have a unique balance of work and home life that's better on both sides. You can have a successful career where you're getting your work done, you're being successful, but also being home with your family when you need to be.
Yeah. Well,
what other questions do you have for me?
One last thing that, I would like to bring up. I was mentioning, now that I've gotten older, when I come over, we smoke some cigars every now and then. That's something I've always enjoyed doing with you, just kind of sitting on the porch, just reflecting, talking about life, getting some whiskey and smoking a cigar. But I think one of the funniest things was, so we went out last night just to get dinner in Charleston with Auburn, and when we came back, me and Daniel had planned on smoking a cigar, and we, instead of just going straight out to smoke a cigar, we watched an episode of Peaky Blinders first.
We had to pregame.
Just to pregame for our experience.
Yeah, make ourselves feel a little badass.
And so when we, after watching Peaky Blinders, we walk out to the porch, put a stogie in, and Daniel pours a little whiskey in my glass, and it was just, well, the Peaky Blinders.
And you better believe we talked in this ass in the whole time. You have to bleep that out. No, it's something fun to do. The ritual of it all, especially with brothers. I remember when you and Isaac came over. That time we sat in the back and we smoked cigars when I told you that you and Isaac that we had found out we were pregnant, and it was just kind of a bonding experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I don't know if you want to talk much about the adoption and all of that, but
if you're open to that, I would love to. I didn't know how you felt about it.
Absolutely. Miscarriage is so common. It's 20% of pregnancies end in miscarriage, and some people handle it well, others don't. But it's just not really talked about a ton publicly. I'm not suggesting that people don't talk about it, but it's definitely not something that a lot of people are comfortable talking about. And so, Auburn and I found out on our anniversary that this was a few years ago now, that we were pregnant. And it was a super exciting time in our lives. And later on found that we had lost the baby, and it was tough. We went through a lot of different emotions during the grieving process, because if you have a grandparent that dies, or a family member that dies, or a friend that dies, you have a relationship to grieve, right? But the relationship with an unborn child, it is a relationship, but it's very different. It's hard to explain that feeling, but others that have experienced that know what I'm talking about, because it's something that you loved so much and loved more than anything, but never got to meet. And throughout our lives together, even back when we were dating, Auburn and I knew that we wanted to adopt. We had always talked about, as much as we can control it, we would love to have 2 biological children and adopt a 3rd child. We definitely felt that calling to adopt. But after the miscarriage and, moving forward from that, we just realized, God called us to adopt already. Why are we waiting? Mm-hmm. And so we started the adoption process back in December of last year. So it's August now. Many, many months of paperwork and training and social work got us to the point where we're presenting to birth mothers, and we're just kind of holding out, hope that God has our lives in his hands, and we know he does. But I don't know. All of that to answer your question about to talk about cigars. Cigars are a very fun thing to do with you guys. I enjoy doing it with Isaac when he comes to visit. Same with you. Isaac has that sweet new patio.
Oh yeah,
with the fire pit that I cannot wait to go see.
It's very symbolic. I like the symbolic moments, anything that rich moments just with other people, deep conversations. That's why I love these podcasts so much, But
it's what us unclassy boys do when we want to feel classy.
That's true. That is facts.
Yeah.
That is facts.
Yeah.
But anyways, Daniel, thank you for your time.
Heck yeah.
Thanks for welcoming me into your home.
Welcoming
me into your home.
Welcoming me into your home.
Daniel and Auburn have been so gracious as to adopt me, a college student,
straight to a college kid.
I'm going up to Columbia, South Carolina, to the University of South Carolina. Go Gamecocks! And that's where I'll be living for the semester. But Daniel and Auburn have opened their home to me to keep some things here and stay in their guest room whenever I want.
Now that you're close by, you'll get the chance to come by on a Thursday night and play Dungeons and Dragons with me, your local DM, and Auburn, your resident young wizard
Dungeons
girl.
and Dragons. Now that's a whole nother conversation. I'm not sure.
Next time on Crack It Cold.
Next time I'll come in and I'll record Daniel's D&D session and expose to the world.
Oh Lord, I don't know if I'm ready to come out for that yet, but it gets a little bit nerdy.
Yeah, well, I mean that's one of the many things that we love about Daniel.
Oh shucks.
Thanks for being on, man.
Absolutely.